I had always believed that family was about love, not blood. For 15 years, I thought I had found that family with my husband David and his daughter Sarah. But sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. If this story touches you, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. My name is Linda, and I'm 52 years old. I work as a regional manager for a mid-sized logistics company here in Ohio, a job that has provided me with financial stability and independence throughout my adult life. I met David when I was 37 and he was 41. He was a widower with a 12-year-old daughter named Sarah, whose mother had passed away from cancer 3 years earlier. David was struggling to balance his demanding job as a construction foreman with single parenthood, and Sarah was still grieving the loss of her mother. When David and I started dating, I knew I was taking on more than just a romantic relationship. Sarah was part of the package, and honestly, I welcomed it. I had always wanted children, but life had taken me down different paths. My first marriage had ended in divorce when I was 32, partly because my ex-husband and I couldn't agree on having children. He wanted to wait indefinitely, and I felt my biological clock ticking. By the time David came into my life, I had accepted that traditional motherhood might not be in my cards, but here was an opportunity to be a mother figure to a girl who desperately needed one. Those early years were challenging but rewarding. Sarah was understandably resistant at first. She had been the center of her father's world since her mother's death, and suddenly there was this new woman trying to establish routines, help with homework, and attend school events. I remember the first time she called me Linda Mom instead of just Linda. It was during her 8th grade graduation, and she was nervous about her speech as class president. I had spent hours helping her practice, and when she saw me in the audience, she waved and mouthed, "Thanks, Linda Mom." My heart nearly burst with pride and love. I threw myself into the role wholeheartedly. I attended every soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. When Sarah got her period for the first time at 14, David was at work, and she called me, embarrassed and scared. I left my office immediately, picked her up from school, took her shopping for supplies, and had the conversation her biological mother never got to have with her. That night she hugged me tight and said, "I'm glad you're here, Linda Mom." David and I married when Sarah was 15. She was our maid of honor, and in her speech at the reception, she said, "Linda didn't just marry my dad. She chose to love me too. And that means everything." I cried happy tears that night, feeling like I had finally found my place in the world. The teenage years brought their challenges, as they do for any parent. Sarah tested boundaries, stayed out past curfew, and had her share of teenage drama. But through it all, I was there. When she got her heart broken by her first boyfriend, I was the one who sat with her on her bedroom floor, eating ice cream and listening to her cry. When she was stressed about college applications, I helped her write essays and drove her to campus visits across 3 states. I contributed significantly to Sarah's college fund, adding thousands of dollars over the years to ensure she could attend her dream school without drowning in debt. When she was accepted to Northwestern University for journalism, I was as proud as any biological mother could be. I helped her move into her dorm, and when she hugged me goodbye, she whispered, "Thank you for everything, Linda Mom. I love you." College changed Sarah, as it does most young people. She became more independent, more confident, and started forming her own adult identity. She made new friends, had new experiences, and began to see the world through different eyes. I was proud of her growth, even when it meant she called home less frequently or seemed more distant during visits. After graduation, Sarah moved to Chicago for her first job at a local newspaper. She was living her dream, and I couldn't have been happier for her. She met Jake, a fellow journalist, during her second year there. He seemed like a nice enough young man, though I noticed he had some strong opinions about family dynamics and traditional values that sometimes rubbed me the wrong way. Jake came from what he called a traditional family. His parents had been married for 30 years. He had 2 siblings, and they all lived within 20 miles of each other. He often made comments about how real families stick together and how blood relations were the strongest bonds. I tried not to take these comments personally, but they stung a little each time. Sarah and Jake got engaged after dating for 2 years. I was thrilled for her happiness, though I noticed she seemed to be adopting some of Jake's viewpoints about family. During the engagement period, she started referring to me as Linda, more often than Linda Mom. And when people asked about her family, she would sometimes say, "It's just me and my dad," as if I wasn't part of the equation. David noticed it too, but he brushed it off as Sarah trying to fit in with Jake's family. "She's just adjusting," he would say. "You know how much she loves you." I wanted to believe him, but the little changes were adding up, and they hurt more than I cared to admit. The wedding planning process was another source of tension. Sarah's future mother-in-law, Patricia, was very involved and had strong opinions about everything from the venue to the guest list. She kept referring to Sarah as her new daughter and making comments about how Sarah was finally getting the mother she deserved. These comments were made in front of me, and Sarah never corrected her or defended our relationship. During one particularly painful conversation about the wedding party, Patricia suggested that Sarah should have her real family in the important roles. When I asked what she meant, she clarified that she thought David should walk Sarah down the aisle alone, without me, because that's how it's traditionally done with the father of the bride. Sarah agreed, saying it would be more meaningful that way. I swallowed my hurt and supported their decision, but it felt like a rejection of everything I had been to Sarah over the years. At the wedding, I sat in the second row, not the first row with the immediate family. I watched as Patricia was introduced as Sarah's mother-in-law and new mom, while I was simply introduced as Linda, David's wife. After the wedding, Sarah and Jake moved to a suburb outside Chicago. They bought a house with help from both sets of parents. David and I contributed $15,000 toward their down payment, the same amount that Jake's parents contributed. We were excited to be part of helping them start their new life together. The first year of their marriage seemed happy enough. Sarah got a promotion at work, and Jake started freelancing for some bigger publications. They talked about wanting to start a family someday, and I looked forward to potentially being a grandmother figure to their children. When Sarah called to tell us she was pregnant, I was over the moon. "You're going to be a grandma, Linda Mom," she said, using the old nickname that I hadn't heard in months. I cried happy tears and immediately started thinking about all the ways I could help and support them during this exciting time. The pregnancy progressed normally, and Sarah seemed happy and healthy. However, I noticed that most of the pregnancy updates and doctor's appointment news came through David rather than directly from Sarah. When I would call to check on her, she was often busy or would keep the conversations short. Jake's mother, Patricia, on the other hand, seemed to be very involved, going to doctor's appointments and helping with nursery planning. About 6 months into the pregnancy, Sarah mentioned that Patricia was planning to throw her a baby shower. I was surprised that I hadn't been consulted or included in the planning, especially since I had always been involved in Sarah's major life events. When I asked Sarah about it, she said, "Oh, Patricia has it all handled. She's really excited about her first grandchild." The phrase, "her first grandchild," stung. This would be my first grandchild too, in every way that mattered to me. I had been there for Sarah's first steps into adulthood, her college years, her career beginnings, and now I was being sidelined for one of the most important milestones of her life. I decided to reach out to Patricia directly to offer my help with the baby shower planning. When I called her, she seemed surprised to hear from me. "Oh, Linda," she said. "I didn't realize you were interested in helping. I just assumed you'd want to attend as a guest." "Of course I want to help," I replied. "Sarah is like a daughter to me, and this is going to be my grandchild too." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Well," Patricia said carefully, "I suppose we could use some extra hands, but I should mention that we're keeping this pretty intimate, just close family and Sarah's closest friends." I felt a chill run down my spine. "I am close family," I said firmly. Of course," Patricia backtracked quickly. I just meant that we're trying to keep the guest list small." Despite her lukewarm response, I threw myself into helping with the baby shower planning. I researched venues, compared catering options, and spent hours creating Pinterest boards with decoration ideas. I wanted this to be perfect for Sarah, regardless of how Patricia felt about my involvement. We decided to hold the shower at Patricia's house, which had a beautiful backyard perfect for an outdoor celebration. The theme was "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," and I spent days crafting decorations. I made star-shaped garlands, created centerpieces with LED lights that looked like tiny stars, and even found a local baker who could make star-shaped cookies with the baby's expected initial. I coordinated with Patricia on the guest list, sent out invitations, and organized the gift registry. I spent my own money on decorations, contributed to the catering costs, and even hired a photographer to capture the special moments. This was going to be Sarah's first baby, and I wanted every detail to be perfect. The week before the shower, I worked late into the night putting finishing touches on everything. I strung lights in Patricia's backyard, arranged tables and chairs, and set up a beautiful gift table with a backdrop I had created featuring photos of Sarah from childhood through her wedding day. Many of the childhood photos were ones I had taken: soccer games, school plays, family vacations. On the morning of the shower, I arrived at Patricia's house at 8 a.m. to help with final preparations. I spent 4 hours arranging flowers, setting up the food stations, and making sure every detail was perfect. The backyard looked magical, with twinkling lights and star decorations creating a dreamy atmosphere. Sarah arrived looking radiant in a flowing yellow dress that complemented the theme perfectly. She seemed genuinely surprised and delighted by the decorations. "This is beautiful," she exclaimed, looking around the transformed backyard. "You and Patricia did such an amazing job." I felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was what I lived for, making Sarah happy, being part of her important moments, contributing to her joy. As guests began to arrive, I played the role of co-hostess, greeting people, directing them to the gift table, and making sure everyone had drinks and appetizers. The guest list included Sarah's college friends, some co-workers, Jake's sisters, and various family members from both sides. I knew most of the people there, having met them at the wedding or other family gatherings over the years. Everyone complimented the decorations and the beautiful setup. About an hour into the party, we gathered everyone for the traditional baby shower games. I had organized a Guess the Baby Food game, a baby photo matching game using photos of the guests as babies, and a Wishes for Baby activity where everyone wrote advice or well wishes on star-shaped cards. Sarah was laughing and enjoying herself, opening gifts and exclaiming over tiny clothes and baby gadgets. I had bought her several gifts: a high-end stroller, a beautiful wooden rocking chair for the nursery, and a collection of classic children's books that I had been collecting for months. When Sarah opened my gifts, she seemed genuinely touched. "Linda, this is too much," she said, running her hand over the smooth wood of the rocking chair. "This is beautiful." "I wanted you to have something special for those late-night feeding sessions," I replied. "Something comfortable where you can bond with the baby." As the party continued, I noticed that Patricia was taking lots of photos and seemed to be positioning herself as the primary hostess, despite all the work I had done. She was the one standing next to Sarah for most of the group photos, and she kept referring to herself as Grandma Patricia when talking about the baby. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. During the gift opening portion of the shower, Patricia made a speech about how excited she was to welcome her first grandchild and how she couldn't wait to spoil the baby. She talked about family traditions she wanted to pass down and how she planned to be very involved in the baby's life. I waited for Sarah to acknowledge my role as well, or for someone to mention that this baby would have two grandmothers who loved them, but that moment never came. Instead, the conversation moved on to other topics, and I felt increasingly invisible despite having organized most of the event. As the afternoon wore on, I continued to play hostess, cleaning up plates, refilling drinks, and making sure everyone was comfortable. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when I overheard a conversation between Patricia and one of Jake's aunts. "You've done such a beautiful job with this shower," the aunt was saying. "Sarah is so lucky to have you as her mother-in-law." "Well, I just want to make sure my first grandchild gets the welcome they deserve," Patricia replied. "It's so important for family to come together for these moments." "It's wonderful that Sarah has found such a loving family," the aunt continued. "Jake's father was telling me how Sarah never really had a proper mother figure growing up, so this must mean so much to her." I froze at the sink, a plate halfway to the drying rack. Never had a proper mother figure? I had been Sarah's mother figure for 15 years. I had been there for every important moment, every milestone, every crisis. How could Patricia's family believe that Sarah had grown up without maternal support? I realized that Sarah must have presented her childhood and adolescence to Jake's family in a way that minimized or erased my role entirely. She had allowed them to believe that she had been raised by a single father, that she had lacked maternal guidance, that Patricia was filling a void that had always existed. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the sink, trying to steady myself as the full implications sank in. Sarah had rewritten our history to fit into Jake's family's narrative about real families and blood relations. She had erased 15 years of love, support, and sacrifice to present herself as someone who had been missing a mother's love. I finished the dishes mechanically, my mind reeling. I walked back out to the party, looking at Sarah with new eyes. She was laughing with her friends, glowing with happiness, surrounded by love and celebration. And I had made it all possible. I had spent days planning, decorating, and organizing this perfect day for her, while she had been telling people that she had never had a proper mother figure. The party continued around me, but I felt like I was watching it from a distance. I smiled when appropriate, laughed at jokes, and continued to play my role as co-hostess. But inside, I was processing the devastating realization that the daughter I had loved and raised for 15 years had been systematically erasing me from her story. As guests began to leave, they thanked both Patricia and me for the beautiful shower. Several people commented on how lucky Sarah was to have such caring people in her life. I accepted their thanks graciously, but each compliment felt hollow now that I understood how Sarah really viewed our relationship. After most of the guests had left, I was in the kitchen packing up leftover food when Sarah approached me. She looked tired but happy, one hand resting on her growing belly. "Linda, I can't thank you enough for everything you did today," she said. "The decorations were absolutely perfect, and I know you put so much work into making this special." I looked at her, this young woman I had loved as my own daughter, and felt a complex mix of emotions. Love, hurt, anger, and disappointment all swirled together in my chest. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I said carefully. "I wanted it to be perfect for you." "It was," she assured me. "Really, it was everything I could have hoped for." There was something in her tone, a finality that made me pause. It was as if she was thanking me for a service I had provided, not acknowledging the love and dedication that had motivated every detail of the day. "Sarah," I said slowly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," she replied, though I noticed she glanced toward the living room where Jake and Patricia were chatting. "Do you ever talk to Jake's family about our relationship? About the years we've spent together as a family?" Sarah's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do they know that I've been your mother figure for 15 years? That I was there for your teenage years, your college applications, your first heartbreak? Do they understand the role I've played in your life?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, and I could see her choosing her words carefully. "Linda, you know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me and Dad. You've been wonderful." "That's not what I asked," I pressed gently. "I'm asking if Jake's family knows about our relationship, about our history together." Sarah sighed and looked uncomfortable. "Jake's family has very traditional views about family structures," she said finally. "They believe that blood relations are the most important bonds, And they have strong feelings about step families and blended families. So you've told them that I'm just your stepmother? I asked, though I was beginning to understand that it was probably worse than that. I've told them that you married my dad when I was a teenager, Sarah said, not quite meeting my eyes. They understand that you've been part of my life. Part of your life, I repeated slowly. Not your mother figure. Not someone who raised you and loved you and sacrificed for you. Sarah's discomfort was obvious now. Linda, it's complicated. Jake's family wouldn't understand the kind of relationship we have. They think that stepmothers are... Well, they have certain ideas about stepmothers that aren't very positive. So instead of defending our relationship or educating them about blended families, you decided to minimize it? I asked, my voice remaining calm despite the storm of emotions inside me. I didn't minimize anything, Sarah said defensively. I just didn't think it was necessary to go into all the details of our family dynamics. Details, I said quietly. You consider 15 years of mothering you to be details. Sarah looked frustrated now. Linda, you're making this into something it's not. I'm grateful for everything you've done, but Jake's family has their own way of looking at things, and I didn't want to create conflict or confusion. So you let them believe that you grew up without a mother figure, I said, the words coming out more sharply than I intended. Sarah's eyes flashed with something. Annoyance, maybe, or guilt. I never said that. You didn't have to say it directly, I replied. But when you don't mention that you had someone who filled that role, when you present yourself as someone who was raised by a single father, that's the impression you create. We stood there in Patricia's kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the beautiful baby shower I had spent days planning, and I felt the distance between us more acutely than ever before. This wasn't just about Jake's family's traditional views. This was about Sarah making a choice to prioritize fitting in with her new family over honoring the relationship we had built over 15 years. Linda, Sarah said finally, her voice taking on a tone I had never heard before, cold, almost dismissive. I think you're overreacting. Jake's family loves me, and they've welcomed me with open arms. They treat me like I'm their own daughter. The way I treated you like my own daughter, I asked quietly. Sarah paused, and for a moment, I thought she might acknowledge what I was really saying. Instead, she straightened up and looked at me with an expression that was almost pitying. Linda, she said, her voice taking on an edge that cut through me like a knife. You need to understand something. Jake's parents are my family now. Patricia is going to be this baby's grandmother. She paused, as if searching for the right words. You're not family. You're my father's wife. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, and for a moment I couldn't speak. 15 years of love, sacrifice, and dedication had just been dismissed with a single sentence. I wasn't family. I was just David's wife. I stared at Sarah, looking for any sign that she realized what she had just said, any indication that she understood the magnitude of her words. But her expression remained firm, almost defiant, as if she had finally said something she had been thinking for a long time. I see, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah seemed to realize that her words had been harsh because she softened slightly. Linda, I don't mean to hurt your feelings. I'm grateful for everything you've done. Really, I am. But now that I'm married and starting my own family, I need to focus on my real family relationships. Real family, I repeated, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. You know what I mean, Sarah said, though she looked uncomfortable again. Blood family, Jake's family, the family I'm creating with my husband and our baby. I nodded slowly, processing not just her words but the finality in her tone. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or something said in the heat of emotion. This was a deliberate redefinition of our relationship, a conscious choice to exclude me from the family she was building. I understand, I said, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Sarah looked relieved that I wasn't arguing with her. I'm glad you understand. I hope we can still have a good relationship, just different than before. Different, I agreed. Yes, I imagine it will be very different. I turned back to the counter and continued packing up the leftover food, my hands moving automatically while my mind struggled to process what had just happened. Sarah stood there for a moment longer, perhaps expecting me to say something else. But when I remained silent, she returned to the living room. I finished cleaning up mechanically, my body going through the motions while my heart broke into pieces. Every decoration I took down, every dish I washed, every surface I wiped clean, felt like I was erasing evidence of my own love and effort. I had spent days creating this perfect celebration for someone who had just told me I wasn't family. When David arrived to pick me up, he found me sitting in Patricia's kitchen, surrounded by boxes of decorations and leftover food. He took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. What happened? He asked, sitting down beside me. I told him about the conversation with Sarah, about her declaration that I wasn't family, about the realization that she had been minimizing our relationship to Jake's family all along. David listened in stunned silence, his face growing darker with each detail. She said what? He asked when I finished. She said I'm not family, that I'm just your wife. David was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Finally, he shook his head. I can't believe she said that to you. After everything you've done for her, everything you've been to her. Apparently everything I've been to her doesn't matter now that she has Jake's family, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. This isn't right, David said firmly. Sarah is out of line and I'm going to talk to her. No, I said quickly. Don't. She's made her position clear. She's chosen her new family over the family that raised her. I need to accept that and figure out how to move forward. David looked like he wanted to argue, but he could see the exhaustion in my face. Linda, you are family. You've been more of a mother to Sarah than most biological mothers are to their children. But that doesn't matter if she doesn't see it that way, I replied. I can't force someone to consider me family if they've decided I'm not. We drove home in relative silence, both of us processing the events of the day. I stared out the window, watching the familiar neighborhoods pass by, and felt like I was seeing everything through new eyes. The life I thought I had built, the relationships I thought were solid, the family I thought I belonged to. It had all been an illusion. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Sarah over and over in my mind. I thought about all the moments over the years when I had felt like her mother, when she had called me Linda Mom, when she had turned to me for comfort and guidance. Had those moments been real? Or had I been deluding myself about the depth of our relationship? I thought about the money I had contributed to her college fund, the down payment for her house, the countless hours I had spent helping her with homework, driving her to activities, supporting her dreams. I thought about the nights I had stayed up worrying about her, the pride I had felt at her accomplishments, the love that had grown in my heart over 15 years. And then I thought about her words. You're not family. You're my father's wife. The next few days passed in a blur of conflicted emotions. I went through the motions of my daily routine. Work, household tasks, conversations with David, but I felt disconnected from everything. David was angry on my behalf and wanted to confront Sarah, but I asked him to wait. I needed time to process what had happened and decide how I wanted to handle the situation. I found myself analyzing every interaction I had ever had with Sarah, looking for signs that I had missed. Had she always felt this way? Had she been pretending to love me all these years? Or had something changed when she met Jake and his family? I remembered the gradual shift in her behavior over the past few years. The way she had started calling me Linda instead of Linda Mom. The way she had begun to exclude me from family narratives. The way she had allowed Jake's family to believe she had grown up without maternal support. The signs had been there, but I had chosen to ignore them, hoping they were just temporary adjustments to her new life. A week after the baby shower, Sarah called to thank me again for all my help. Her voice was cheerful and normal, as if our conversation in Patricia's kitchen had never happened. "The shower was absolutely perfect," she said. "Everyone is still talking about how beautiful everything looked." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I wanted to let you know that we got the photos back from the photographer you hired," Sarah continued. "They turned out amazing. Patricia is going to make an album for the baby." "That's nice," I said. There was a pause, and I could sense that Sarah was waiting for me to say something more enthusiastic or engaged. When I didn't, she continued. "We also wanted to talk to you and Dad about the baby's birth. We've been thinking about who we want in the delivery room and who we want to visit in the first few days." "Okay," I said simply. "Well, we've decided that we want to keep it really small and intimate, just immediate family for the first week or so." I understood immediately what she was saying. "I see. Patricia is going to stay with us for the first 2 weeks to help out, and Jake's sister is going to come the second week. We thought it would be best to have people who really understand babies and can provide the kind of support new parents need." "And you don't think I can provide that kind of support?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sarah hesitated. "It's not that, Linda. It's just that Patricia raised 3 children, and Jake's sister just had her second baby, so they have recent experience with newborns." "I see," I said again. "And when would you like David and me to visit?" "Maybe after the first month when things have settled down a bit," Sarah said. "We'll definitely want you to meet the baby, of course." "Of course," I repeated. "After the first month." I hope you understand," Sarah said. "We just want to make sure we have the right support system in place for those crucial first weeks." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You want your real family there for the important moments." There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Sarah said, "Linda, I thought we had cleared this up. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings the other day." "You didn't hurt my feelings, Sarah," I said calmly. "You clarified our relationship. I'm grateful for the honesty." "I don't want there to be any bad feelings between us," Sarah said. "There aren't any bad feelings," I replied. "I simply understand now where I stand in your life, and I'll adjust my expectations accordingly." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. If Sarah wanted to redefine our relationship, if she wanted to exclude me from her family narrative, then I would respect her wishes. But I would also protect myself from further hurt by adjusting my own behavior and expectations. I called my financial advisor and made some changes to my will and my savings allocations. The money I had been setting aside for Sarah's future children's college funds was redirected to scholarships for underprivileged students. The emergency fund I had maintained for Sarah's potential needs was moved into my retirement account. I also made some changes to my emotional investments. I stopped checking Sarah's social media obsessively, stopped planning future visits and gifts, stopped imagining myself as a grandmother to her children. If I wasn't family, then I wouldn't act like family. David noticed the changes in my behavior and asked about them. I explained my reasoning, and while he was initially resistant, he eventually understood my perspective. "You're protecting yourself," he said. "I'm accepting reality," I corrected. "Sarah has made it clear that I'm not part of her family. I'm simply adjusting my behavior to match that reality." "But you've been more of a mother to her than most biological mothers," David protested. "That may be true," I said, "but it doesn't matter if she doesn't see it that way. I can't force someone to love me or consider me family. All I can do is respect their wishes and protect my own emotional well-being." Over the next few months, as Sarah's pregnancy progressed, I maintained a polite but distant relationship with her. When she called with updates, I listened and responded appropriately, but I didn't ask follow-up questions or offer unsolicited advice. When she mentioned baby preparations, I expressed appropriate interest, but didn't offer to help or contribute financially. David found this difficult to watch. He had always been proud of the relationship Sarah and I had built, and seeing it deteriorate was painful for him. He tried several times to mediate or encourage Sarah to reconsider her position, but I asked him to stop. "This is between Sarah and me," I told him. "She's made her choice, and I've made mine. Trying to force a reconciliation will only make things worse." "But you love her," David said, "and she loves you, even if she's not showing it right now." "Love isn't always enough," I replied. "Sometimes people grow apart, and sometimes relationships change. I need to accept that and move on." 3 weeks before Sarah's due date, she called with an update that confirmed everything I had suspected about my place in her new family structure. "I wanted to let you know that we've finalized our birth plan," she said. "Jake and I have decided that we only want Patricia in the delivery room with us. She's going to be our main support person." "That's nice," I said. "And we've set up a schedule for visitors after the baby is born. Patricia will be staying with us for the first 2 weeks, and then Jake's sister will come for a week after that." "You mentioned that before," I said. "Right. Well, we've been thinking about when would be a good time for you and Dad to visit, and we think maybe after the first month would be best. That way, the baby will be a little more settled, and we'll have gotten into a routine." "That sounds reasonable," I said. "Great," Sarah said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "I'm so glad you understand. I know some people might be offended by not being included right away, but I knew you'd be mature about it." "I understand exactly where I stand," I said. "There's no confusion on my part." After the call, I realized that Sarah had no idea how much her words and actions had hurt me. In her mind, she had simply made practical decisions about her birth plan and early postpartum period. She didn't understand that by excluding me from these crucial moments while including Patricia, she was sending a clear message about my importance in her life. But perhaps that was for the best. If Sarah could exclude me so easily, if she could dismiss 15 years of love and dedication without apparent guilt or regret, then maybe she had never valued our relationship as much as I had thought. The baby was born on a Tuesday morning in October. David got the call from Jake around noon, letting us know that Sarah had delivered a healthy baby girl named Emma. Patricia had been in the delivery room, and Jake's parents were already at the hospital meeting their granddaughter. "Congratulations, Grandpa," I said to David when he hung up the phone. "Congratulations to you too, Grandma," he replied. But we both knew that title wasn't really mine to claim. David wanted to go to the hospital immediately, but I reminded him of Sarah's wishes about visitors. "She asked us to wait until after the first month," I said. "We should respect that." "But I'm her father," David protested. Surely she didn't mean I had to wait a month to meet my granddaughter. "Call and ask," I suggested, "but don't be surprised if she sticks to the original plan." David called Jake, who confirmed that they were sticking to their visitor schedule. David could come to the hospital briefly that evening, but they preferred that I wait until later when things were more settled. The message was clear. David was immediate family and welcome right away. I was not. David went to the hospital that evening and came home with photos of baby Emma and stories about how beautiful and perfect she was. He also came home with a deeper understanding of how Sarah was treating me. "Patricia was holding the baby when I got there," he told me. "She kept calling herself Grandma Patricia and talking about all the things she was going to teach Emma. Sarah was just lying there smiling, like it was the most natural thing in the world." "It probably feels natural to her," I said. "Patricia is Emma's grandmother. I'm just your wife." "When I asked about you visiting, Sarah said maybe in a few weeks when the baby was older," David continued. "She said she wanted to make sure Emma was comfortable with her real family first, before introducing other people." "Other people," I repeated. "That's what I am now. Other people." David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I told Sarah that you had been looking forward to meeting Emma, and she said that of course you could meet her eventually, but that Patricia was the baby's grandmother and should have priority." "She's not wrong," I said, though the words tasted bitter. Patricia is Emma's biological grandmother. I'm not related to Emma at all. You're related through love and history, David said firmly. You raised Sarah. You're part of this family. Not according to Sarah, I replied. And ultimately, she gets to decide who is part of her family and who isn't. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as Sarah's new family celebrated Emma's arrival. Social media was filled with photos of Patricia holding the baby, Jake's parents visiting, and Sarah looking radiant with her new daughter. The captions talked about Grandma and Grandpa, and family time, and blessed to have such loving support. I wasn't in any of the photos. I wasn't mentioned in any of the posts. It was as if I didn't exist in Sarah's world anymore. David visited several more times during those first weeks, and each visit reinforced the new family dynamic. Patricia was clearly established as the primary grandmother, the go-to person for advice and support. Jake's family was fully integrated into Emma's life from day one, and I was absent. It's like you've been erased, David said after one particularly difficult visit. Sarah talks about her family, and you're just not part of the conversation anymore. Because I'm not part of her family anymore, I said. She made that very clear. This isn't right, David said. After everything you've done, everything you've been to her, she can't just pretend you don't exist. She's not pretending I don't exist, I corrected. She's acknowledging that I exist, but in a different category than I thought I was in. I'm her father's wife, not her mother figure. I'm someone who was part of her childhood, not someone who is part of her adult family. But that's not fair, David protested. Fair doesn't enter into it, I said. This is about Sarah's choices and her right to define her own family relationships. I may not like her choices, but I have to respect them. A month after Emma's birth, Sarah finally called to invite David and me for a visit. Her tone was cheerful and normal, as if the past month of exclusion had been perfectly reasonable. We're finally ready for visitors, she announced. Emma is doing so well, and we've gotten into a good routine. Patricia went home last week, so this would be a perfect time for you and Dad to come meet your granddaughter. Our granddaughter? I asked. Well, Dad's granddaughter, Sarah corrected quickly. But I know you'll love meeting her too. I'm sure I will, I said neutrally. We arranged to visit the following Saturday. I spent the week trying to prepare myself emotionally for what I knew would be a difficult experience. I would be meeting a baby who was supposed to be my granddaughter, but who I had been told was not really related to me. I would be visiting a home where I was welcome as a guest, but not as family. I bought a small gift for Emma, a soft pink blanket that I thought would be practical and appropriate. I didn't go overboard with gifts the way I might have in the past, when I thought I was going to be this child's grandmother. When we arrived at Sarah and Jake's house, the difference in my reception compared to what Patricia must have experienced was immediately obvious. Sarah hugged David warmly, and immediately led him to see Emma, who was sleeping in a bassinet in the living room. Dad, meet your granddaughter, Sarah said softly, lifting the sleeping baby and placing her in David's arms. I stood back and watched as David held Emma for the first time, his face lighting up with joy and wonder. It was a beautiful moment, and I was happy for him. But I also felt like an outsider looking in on a family moment that didn't include me. Linda, would you like to hold her? Sarah asked after David had spent several minutes bonding with Emma. If that's okay, I said. Sarah carefully transferred Emma to my arms, and I looked down at this tiny person who was supposed to be my granddaughter. She was beautiful, with Sarah's dark hair and Jake's nose. I felt a surge of love for her, but also a deep sadness knowing that I wouldn't be part of her life in any meaningful way. She's beautiful, I said, and I meant it. Thank you, Sarah said. We think she's pretty perfect. As I held Emma, I thought about all the things I had imagined doing with Sarah's children. I had pictured myself babysitting, reading bedtime stories, teaching her to bake cookies, being the grandmother who spoiled her and sent her home to her parents full of sugar and mischief. But that wasn't going to be my role. I was just Linda, David's wife, someone who would see Emma occasionally at family gatherings, but who wouldn't be part of her daily life or her important milestones. After a few minutes, I handed Emma back to Sarah. "Thank you for letting me meet her," I said. "Of course," Sarah replied. "I want you to be part of her life." But we both knew that wasn't really true. Sarah wanted me to be part of Emma's life in the same way that any family friend might be. Occasionally present but not essential, welcome but not necessary. The visit continued for another hour, with Sarah showing us Emma's nursery and talking about her new routines as a mother. She mentioned Patricia frequently, talking about the advice she had given and the help she had provided during those crucial first weeks. "Patricia has been amazing," Sarah said. "I don't know what I would have done without her. She really knows babies and she's been so supportive." "That's wonderful," I said, though each mention of Patricia felt like another reminder of my own exclusion. As we prepared to leave, Sarah walked us to the door. "Thank you so much for coming," she said. "I hope you'll visit again soon." "We'd like that," David said. "Maybe next time Patricia will be here too," Sarah added. "I think you'd really like her, Linda. She's such a wonderful person." "I'm sure she is," I said. On the drive home, David and I were both quiet, processing the visit and what it had revealed about our new family dynamic. "She really doesn't see it, does she?" David said finally. "See what?" I asked. "How much she's hurt you, how unfair this whole situation is." "I don't think she's trying to be unfair," I said. "I think she genuinely believes that what she's doing is natural and appropriate. In her mind, Patricia is Emma's grandmother, and I'm just someone who used to be part of her life." "But you're still part of her life," David protested. "I'm part of her past," I corrected. "There's a difference." Over the following months, I settled into my new role as a peripheral figure in Sarah's life. I saw Emma occasionally when Sarah and Jake visited David, but these visits were infrequent and brief. I was always polite and appropriate, but I didn't try to build a relationship with Emma the way I might have in the past. Sarah seemed comfortable with this arrangement. She would update us on Emma's milestones and development, but she didn't ask for my advice or input the way new mothers often do with their own mothers or mother figures. When Emma started teething, Sarah called Patricia for advice. When she had questions about feeding schedules, she consulted Jake's sister. When she needed babysitting, she asked Jake's parents. I was never her first call, or even her second or third call. I was someone who received updates, not someone who provided support. This became particularly clear when Emma was about 6 months old and Sarah had to go back to work. She needed regular childcare, and I had assumed that she might ask me to help, the way many families rely on grandparents for babysitting. Instead, Sarah arranged for Patricia to come stay with them for 2 weeks while they transitioned Emma to daycare. When I asked David why Sarah hadn't considered asking me to help, he said she had told him that she wanted Emma to be comfortable with her real grandmother before starting daycare. "Real grandmother," I repeated, the phrase that had become a constant reminder of my place in this family. "I'm sorry, Linda," David said. "I know this is hard." "It's reality," I said. "I need to accept it and move on." But accepting it and moving on proved to be more difficult than I had anticipated. Every family gathering, every milestone, every photo on social media was a reminder of what I had lost. I had gone from being Sarah's mother figure to being a family friend, from being an essential part of her support system to being an occasional visitor. The final confirmation of my new status came when Emma turned 1. Sarah threw a big birthday party, inviting family and friends to celebrate. David and I were invited, of course, but when we arrived, it was clear that we were guests, not family. Patricia and Jake's parents were seated at the family table, helping with Emma and being included in all the photos. I was seated with Sarah's college friends and coworkers, people who were nice but who I didn't know well. During the party, I watched as Patricia helped Emma open presents, as Jake's mother fed her birthday cake, as Sarah's new family celebrated this milestone together. I took a few photos and made appropriate conversation, but I felt like an outsider at what should have been my granddaughter's birthday party. The most painful moment came when Sarah made a speech thanking everyone for coming and for being part of Emma's life. She specifically thanked Grandma Patricia and Grandpa Jim for all their love and support, and she thanked Jake's parents for being such wonderful grandparents. She thanked David for being the best grandpa a little girl could ask for, but she didn't mention me at all. Not as a grandmother, not as a family member, not even as someone who had been part of her life for 15 years. I realized in that moment that I had been completely erased from Sarah's family narrative. I wasn't just excluded from the grandmother role. I was excluded from any meaningful role in Emma's life or in Sarah's conception of her family. After the party, as David and I drove home, I made a decision that had been building for months. "I can't do this anymore," I told David. "Do what?" he asked. "Pretend that this is okay. Pretend that I'm fine with being treated like a stranger by someone I raised for 15 years. Pretend that it doesn't hurt to be excluded from Emma's life." David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to step back," I said. "I want to stop attending these family gatherings where I'm made to feel like an outsider. I want to stop pretending that Sarah and I have a relationship when we clearly don't." "But if you step back, you'll miss out on Emma's childhood," David pointed out. "I'm already missing out on Emma's childhood," I said. "I'm not her grandmother, remember? I'm just your wife. And if that's all I am, then I don't need to be at every family gathering pretending otherwise." David understood what I was saying, even though it was difficult for him to accept. He loved Sarah and wanted our family to stay together, but he could see how much the current situation was hurting me. "What about Sarah?" he asked. "What if she realizes what she's lost and wants to repair the relationship?" "Then she knows where to find me," I said. "But I'm not going to keep putting myself in situations where I'm reminded that I'm not considered family." "I support whatever you decide," David said finally. "You've been more patient and gracious about this than anyone could expect." Over the next few months, I gradually stepped back from Sarah's life. I stopped attending every family gathering, choosing instead to visit when I felt emotionally prepared and when I could maintain appropriate boundaries. I stopped checking Sarah's social media, stopped asking David for constant updates about Emma, and stopped planning my schedule around their visits. It was difficult at first. I had been so invested in Sarah's life for so long that stepping back felt like losing a part of myself. But gradually, I began to find peace in the distance. I wasn't constantly being reminded of my exclusion, and I wasn't setting myself up for disappointment by expecting more from the relationship than Sarah was willing to give. Sarah noticed the change, of course. She asked David why I wasn't coming to family dinners as often, why I seemed more distant during our conversations, why I wasn't as involved in Emma's life as she had expected. David explained that I was giving her the space she had requested, that I was respecting her definition of our relationship. Sarah seemed surprised by this, as if she hadn't realized that her words and actions had consequences. "I never said Linda couldn't be part of Emma's life," she told David. "No," David replied, "but you made it clear that she wasn't family, and Linda is respecting that boundary." "I didn't mean she couldn't be involved at all," Sarah protested. "Then maybe you should tell her that," David suggested. "But you need to understand that you can't have it both ways. You can't exclude someone from your family and then expect them to act like family when it's convenient for you." Sarah never had that conversation with me. Perhaps she realized that she would have to acknowledge the hurt she had caused, or perhaps she was comfortable with the new dynamic. Either way, our relationship remained politely distant. I found other ways to channel my maternal instincts and my desire to be part of a family. I became more involved with my sister's children, who lived across the country, but who welcomed my attention and affection. I volunteered with a local mentoring program for teenage girls, providing guidance and support to young women who needed a mother figure in their lives. I also focused on my relationship with David, strengthening our marriage and building a life that didn't revolve around Sarah's approval or inclusion. We traveled more, pursued hobbies together, and created new traditions that were just for us. It wasn't the life I had imagined when I first fell in love with David and his young daughter 15 years ago. I had pictured myself growing old, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved me, being the matriarch of a blended family that had overcome its challenges to become stronger together. Instead, I learned that love isn't always enough, that family is defined by the people in it rather than by the people who want to be in it, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is respect someone's right to exclude you from their life. Emma is 3 years old now, and she's a beautiful, bright little girl who brings joy to everyone who meets her. When I see her at the occasional family gathering, she's polite but distant, the way children are with family friends rather than with grandparents. She calls me Miss Linda and runs to Patricia when she needs comfort or wants to play. I don't blame Emma for this. She's simply responding to the family structure that Sarah has created, where Patricia is grandma and I am Miss Linda, David's wife. Emma doesn't know that I helped raise her mother, that I was there for Sarah's first steps into adulthood, that I once thought I would be her grandmother too, and perhaps that's for the best. Emma has a loving family, including grandparents who adore her, and parents who are devoted to her happiness. She doesn't need to know about the complicated history between her mother and me, or about the relationship that might have been. Sarah seems happy with her life and her choices. She has the traditional family structure that Jake's family values, with clear roles and blood-based relationships. Patricia is the grandmother. Jake's parents are the other grandparents. And I am, well, I'm someone who used to be important, but who isn't anymore. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah ever thinks about our conversation in Patricia's kitchen, if she ever regrets the words that changed everything between us. But mostly, I try not to think about it at all. I've learned to find peace in accepting what is, rather than mourning what might have been. David still struggles with the situation sometimes. He loves Sarah and wants our family to be whole, but he also sees how,